1. The struggle for equality in a divided America. By the end of slavery in the United States, white supremacists could not accept the idea of black people living among them as equals. Whether it was about where to live, where to eat, or even where to play, they wanted black people to remain separate, far from their communities. This led to the rise of segregated schools, playing areas, public facilities, and even entire towns that were designated for black people. Though slavery officially ended by the 1880s, the harsh reality of racial segregation and the enforcement of Jim Crow laws became the new oppressive norm. These laws ensured that black communities were systematically isolated, both physically and socially. Despite this, black Americans clung to hope, and by 1888, over 200 black towns had been established, many of them flourishing. These towns became a beacon of progress and prosperity, despite the external pressures to break them down. But that prosperity sparked jealousy among white supremacists, who saw the success of these communities as a threat to their dominance. What followed was a clear demonstration that, even though slavery had been abolished, black Americans were far from having equal rights in the country. The systemic racism that began in those times still affects society today. The legacy of those black towns, along with the struggles and resilience of the people who lived in them, reminds us of the ongoing fight for true equality in the United States. 2. The forgotten black towns erased by racism. Within just a few years, the thriving black towns that once stood as symbols of resilience and success were systematically destroyed, flooded, and wiped off the map, erased by structural and systemic racism. In this video, we'll explore the tragic fate of one such town. Let's get started. Oscarville and the hidden history of Lake Lanier. Today, Lake Lanier in Georgia is a serene haven for fishing, boating, and tranquil getaways. Spanning 38,000 acres and boasting 692 miles of shoreline, it also provides a crucial water source for Atlanta. Yet, beneath its calm waters lies a dark, painful history that many are unaware of. Lake Lanier was created over the remains of Oscarville, a once thriving African American community that faced destruction in 1912. Oscarville, located in the northeastern part of Forsyth County, Georgia, was a small but vibrant black community. Established in the late 1800s, it was home to over 100 black families who worked as farmers, carpenters, and in various trades. Despite the harsh realities of Jim Crow laws, Oscarville's residents had built a self-sufficient and close-knit community. But everything changed in September of 1912 when the town was shattered by allegations of assaults against white women. 2 black men, along with 4 others believed to be involved, were arrested, sparking rising tensions. Shortly after, the body of a white woman was discovered, leading to a series of violent reprisals. Oscarville became a target. 1 black suspect was brutally attacked and lynched by a white mob. 2 black teenagers were also publicly hanged, all without any concrete evidence of their involvement in the crimes. The sad truth is that they were mere suspects, and their deaths were unjust, marking the beginning of the end for Oscarville. What followed was the complete erasure of this once prosperous town, not just from maps but from history itself. The legacy of Oscarville, like many other black towns, was submerged, quite literally under the waters of Lake Lanier, forgotten by most, but not by those who remember the painful truth behind its disappearance. 3. The systemic erasure of thriving black communities in America. Following the brutal executions in Oscarville, terror spread like wildfire. A group of white men known as the Night Riders unleashed a terrifying campaign against Oscarville's black residents. Homes, churches, and schools were burned to the ground, and black families were forced to flee for their lives. Over 1,000 residents were displaced due to this horrifying wave of violence. In the aftermath, the Army Corps of Engineers acquired the land, and Lake Lanier was constructed over the ruins of the destroyed community. This act, perhaps intentional, buried the haunting atrocities that had occurred beneath the waters. The forgotten story of Kalijah. Not far from the peaceful waters of Lake Martin in Alabama, Cowaliga once flourished as a beacon of resilience for African Americans in the late 19th century. The story of this community began with John Benson, a former black slave who demonstrated remarkable determination. Through his hard work and vision, he purchased thousands of acres of land in Alabama and sold parcels to other black families. offering them the rare chance to own property when it was almost impossible for African Americans elsewhere. No one knows what work Benson did to accumulate such wealth, but his efforts gave black people an opportunity to carve out a future in a world that actively worked against them. Cowilliga thrived, becoming known for its black-owned railroad and home to the Cowilliga Academic and Industrial Institute. This institution was a symbol of hope and progress, providing African American students with education and vocational training. It equipped them with the skills to survive in a world that often offered little opportunity to people of color. However, this prosperity was not to last. The growing influence of the Ku Klux Klan, coupled with the economic decline of the 1920s, cast a dark shadow over the community. By the 1950s, the once thriving town of Cowilliga had vanished entirely, erased like so many other black towns across the country. These stories are just two examples of how systemic racism and violence dismantled prosperous black communities in America. The erasure of towns like Oscarville and Cowilliga reflects a pattern of discrimination that has left lasting scars on the nation's history. Scars that continue to impact society today. 4. The destruction of thriving black communities and their hidden histories. In the 1960s, the Alabama Power Company forcibly acquired all the land in Cowilliga from black families to construct a hydroelectric dam, leading to the creation of Lake Martin. This forced displacement left many black families heartbroken, with no homes or shelter to protect their loved ones. They were left to fend for themselves, becoming victims of racial segregation. Imagine the devastating plight of these families, walking away from their homes with no hope, left vulnerable to the cruelty of the times. Before we continue, a quick reminder. Please support our channel by subscribing and liking the video. We want to build a strong community, and your support makes that possible. Now, let's get back to uncovering the stories of these lost communities. The tragic tale of Seneca Village in New York City. In 1825, Seneca Village in New York City stood as a beacon of hope during a time when legal segregation and discrimination were widespread. This thriving black community was located on the outskirts of the city, from 82nd Street to 89th Street on Manhattan's Upper West Side. Despite the challenges of the era, nearly 300 proud black residents defied the odds to build a prosperous and tightly knit neighborhood. What set Seneca Village apart was its high rate of black property ownership. In an era when owning property was nearly impossible for African Americans due to legal and societal barriers, Seneca Village was remarkable. The rate of black property ownership there was 5 times higher than the city's average. An extraordinary feat that provided the community with a sense of stability and pride. Within this vibrant community, 3 churches served as spiritual centers, offering black residents a place of solace and unity. The residents supported one another, creating a network of care and mutual aid. In a city where black individuals faced constant obstacles, Seneca Village was a testament to the resilience and strength of its people. Sadly, this sense of community would not last. As New York City grew, the land occupied by Seneca Village became covered by developers and city planners. In the mid-1850s, the city seized the land through eminent domain to build Central Park. The residents were forced out, and their homes were demolished, erasing Seneca Village from the landscape and, for many years, from history itself. This is yet another tragic example of how black communities, despite their resilience and achievements, were torn apart by systemic racism and the forces of progress that disregarded their lives and contributions. Today, the stories of Oscarville, Cowilliga, and Seneca Village remind us of the deeply rooted challenges African Americans have faced. Challenges that continue to resonate in society. 5. The erasure of Seneca Village, a heartbreaking tale of displacement. In Seneca Village, the black community thrived despite the obstacles they faced. They built a school to educate their children and fostered a variety of small businesses, including a bustling grocery store, a skilled shoemaker, and a talented blacksmith. Yet, life was far from easy. Discriminatory laws were constantly being imposed, aiming to restrict their freedoms and hinder their opportunities. But the people of Seneca Village persevered, creating a prosperous and tightly knit community on the outskirts of New York City. As the city grew, however, the wealthy and influential had grand visions of reshaping the area. Dreaming of a massive green oasis, a park that we now know as Central Park. But what many don't realize is that this beloved park was built on the graveyard of Seneca Village, a thriving black town that was tragically erased. In 1853, and again in 1855, the New York State Legislature passed laws that granted the city the power to seize land, including the land owned by black residents of Seneca Village, to make way for the park's development. The city accused the residents of being a public nuisance, despite the village's vibrant community life. Schools, businesses, and homes that had been painstakingly built were wiped away in the blink of an eye. In 1857, the city forcibly displaced the residents, leaving them homeless and heartbroken. Many black families were forced to relocate to Manhattan's Lower East Side, far from the community they had worked so hard to establish. The land was cleared, and Central Park began to take shape, but at the cost of a flourishing black community. This tragic story of Seneca Village is a stark reminder of how systemic racism and forced displacement have devastated black communities throughout American history. Despite their resilience and efforts to build a better life, the residents of Seneca Village were marginalized and abandoned by a government that failed to protect their rights. The wealthy elites, with their grand vision for a park, showed little regard for the well-being of the black families who had built the town. The erasure of Seneca Village stands as a heartbreaking example of how progress has often come at the expense of marginalized communities, with their lives and legacies buried under the green landscapes we enjoy today. 6. The hidden legacy of Seneca Village and Vanport's rise and fall. The loss of Seneca Village left a deep and lasting impact on the African American residents who were forcibly removed from their homes, dreams, and businesses. Their displacement signaled not only the erasure of a thriving black community but also a broader pattern of discrimination and systemic racism in the United States. Today, the only visible reminder of Seneca Village is a plaque erected in 2001, honoring the lost village. This plaque serves as a powerful symbol of the vibrant black communities that have been erased throughout history. Though Seneca Village may be gone, its legacy endures as a testament to the resilience of its people and the ongoing struggle for justice and equality. During World War II, the state of Oregon witnessed the rapid emergence of a town called Vanport. Initially, Vanport was not a place of much significance, but the war brought about a transformation that altered its destiny forever. As shipbuilding industries boomed to support the war effort, Vanport rose to prominence, becoming the second largest city in Oregon. Vanport was built to house the growing workforce, many of whom were African Americans who had moved north in search of jobs and better opportunities. For a time, Vanport symbolized a melting pot of hope, where diverse communities, including black families, contributed to the war effort and sought better lives. However, this rapid growth would come at a high cost. Vanport's construction was rushed, with little attention paid to long-term sustainability. The town was built on a floodplain, which would ultimately prove to be a fatal flaw. In 1948, after years of racial tension and social struggles, a catastrophic flood struck Vanport, destroying the entire town in a matter of hours. Thousands of residents, including many African Americans, were left homeless, their lives turned upside down by the devastating flood. The city that had once symbolized opportunity was wiped off the map, and its residents, much like those of Seneca Village, were displaced and left to rebuild their lives from scratch. The story of Vanport, much like Seneca Village, highlights the fragile nature of black communities that thrived for a time but were ultimately destroyed by a combination of neglect, systemic racism, and natural disasters. Both Seneca Village and Vanport serve as reminders of the resilience and enduring spirit of those who built them, and the long-standing struggle for justice, equality, and recognition. 7. Vanport. A tale of opportunity, injustice, and tragedy. The booming wartime economy in the 1940s brought African Americans from the southern states to Oregon, eager to escape the grip of Jim Crow laws and seize new job opportunities. However, there was an underlying bitterness to this promise of a better life. Due to systemic racism, the Albina neighborhood in Portland was the only legally designated area where black residents could live. This, combined with a housing shortage brought on by the war effort, led to the creation of Vanport, a temporary solution constructed in haste. Perhaps too much haste, on a floodplain. At its peak, Vanport was home to 40,000 residents, many of them African American, living in a bustling, albeit precariously built, community. It offered a sense of hope and refuge, yet its very foundation seemed to reflect the racial inequalities of the time. Whether by poor planning or deliberate neglect, the decision to build the city on a floodplain had catastrophic consequences. In 1948, the Columbia River, usually a source of life, became an unstoppable force of destruction. Without warning, it flooded with such fury that the entire city of Vanport was wiped out in just one day. Over 18,500 families, including a significant number of African Americans, were suddenly left homeless. Their lives forever changed by the waters that consumed their homes and dreams. This devastating flood, like other instances of Black communities being displaced or destroyed, raises uncomfortable questions. Was this disaster merely an accident of poor planning, or a reflection of systemic disregard for Black lives and neighborhoods? The tragedy of Vanport is often overlooked in mainstream history lessons, leaving many unaware of how deeply systemic racism ran. Even in moments of natural disaster. Did you know about this systemic flooding and the erasure of Black communities like Vanport? Do you think this part of Black history is sufficiently taught in schools? Let us know your thoughts about how deliberate and tragic these incidents are. If you'd like to see more videos on this subject, please support us by subscribing to hitting the bell icon. Be sure to check out more videos on our channel as well, as we uncover these hidden stories in Black history.